straight and bright. By the light of the Word.
Today on Light of the Word with Pastor Ray.
They were doing ministry, I believe, in Somalia, and Nick's oldest son died of malaria, which easily could have been healed here in the States, but he dies there. And he says, I was devastated. I was poured out. He didn't say it, but I know he wept till he didn't have anything left to weep. But me and my wife both said, Jesus is worth it. The gospel is worth it.
Open your heart to us, Lord, so we can know your word. We come before you, Jesus. Speak to our hearts as we discover your love for us. How wide, how deep, how far. Pouring to us so we can learn to follow. One surrender at a time. You have made the way for us to know you, a path that's straight and bright. By the light of the Word.
Even the most faithful of saints may falter when the safety of those they love is on the line. God designed families to have a deep love for one another. The love of a parent for their child is the closest thing that compares to the love God has for mankind. As Pastor Ray challenges us in today's message, Jesus is worth even the loss of our loved ones. We may cringe when we hear this hard truth, but it is true nonetheless. Hopefully it never comes to it, but we should be willing to give up even family relationships for the sake of Christ. Well, let's join Pastor Ray for today's edition of Light of the Word from the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 30.
David thought he had a good plan. He thought he had a good plan leaving Judah, the land of God. He thought there was logic. He thought there was schema that this would be well. To leave the suffering, the tribulation, and all those things I just described, that I can whisk my family away and bring them into a place of safety, and we can be a family, and we can have comfort, and we can have a peaceable life, a profitable life, an abundant life together, even if it means apart from the will of God, even if it means being away from the place that God would have us. And I just need to say, and I need to say it to myself and say it for all mothers and fathers, I would rather be in the most dangerous place on the earth, Saul and his 3,000 men chasing me, and be in the will of God, than in the safest place on earth, Ziklag, outside of the will of God. And I think there's a place for us as parents that we can get in this place that we go, you know, all I want is comfort for my family. I just want to make sure my family is taken care of, even if it means maybe leaving some suffering and some tribulation that God has put us under. Because if I come over here, comfort and ease. Yeah, I know I'm not in the perfect will of God, but this makes sense because this is my family. And we said last week and the week before, is Jesus worth it? Is Jesus worth our lives? 100% fully committed at whatever the price. Poverty, pain, suffering, tribulation, unpopularity, loneliness, sanctified loneliness. Is Jesus worth it to live it out fully? So I'm reminded of the story, and I shared with you the story from The Insanity of God, Nick Ripken. And Nick went, this is 25 years ago, he went from country to country to country to places where Christians were being persecuted. A place where Christians can die for their faith. And boy, something that is foreign to us, is it not? But I don't want to diminish that is because you know what? We can still feel in the same way that we're being persecuted. As people mock us and people, and especially you youth in the schools, in your life, and people, do you really believe that? People can mock us of, man, that's so archaic. That's so Neanderthal thinking. And you can be mocked and ridiculed and taunted in the schoolyard and in all those type of places. And so persecution can be the same. But boy, this persecution that these folks experienced, wow. Told you the story about Dmitri there in Russia, being inside that prison for 17 years, simply for teaching the Bible to his family. To think that I could spend 17 years being beaten and in a stinky, small cell because I taught this word. He's no different. I'm no different than him. All he did was open the Bible and start reading it, and he ended up 17 years in prison. I get the freedom to do it here every day, and I have no fear that this door is going to bust down. I have no fear that we're going to be hauled away, or especially me. Dmitri, every morning he would sing his heart song to the Lord and lift his holy hands, even with much tribulation and beating. Nick Ripkin went to another place. There was a man, no name, in a country, no name. His name, his country, any details about him could not be told because where he lived, death was imminent for a follower of Christ, especially an outspoken follower of Christ. This man, I have no name for him, but he lived in a not predominant, but a dominant Muslim region. And he himself was Muslim, raised in it his whole life, grown up in that. When he would say in this interview, and so the interview was set up, and let me set the scene how it would go. Nick could not know where the location was. They took him somewhere that he had no idea that he was. They took him into this small apartment on the 3rd floor. He had no idea where he was. He walked into a room, and there in the room was nothing but a light hanging over Nick, and he could not see the man, only hear the man, because he couldn't get any facial details, because if any details of this man got out, he would be a dead man. And for 6 hours, he talked to this man, and this man told him his story, and here's how his story went. I was a commander and a leader of a small marauder force of 15 men. And when the foreign invaders, and there's no detail, but very well could have been any of the Western Hemisphere type countries. When the foreign invaders came, we fought against them in the name of Allah. And he would say, and I took great joy in killing in the name of Allah. How many men I killed in the battlefield, I do not know. He goes, but one of the things I would do on a regular, continual basis, in the midst of the night, in the darkness, I would sneak into a camp silently, and I would slit the throat of my enemy as I held his throat so he couldn't make a sound. And then I would take great joy of the blood of my enemy washing down over my hands. To Nick says, how many? He goes, I lost count, somewhere around 150. And that doesn't count the battlefield. He said, but I started having dreams. And in my dreams, there was blood on my hands. And in my dreams, I would go over and wash my hands and wash the blood away. And in the beginning of my dreams, these would be little splotches of blood. But then as my dreams continued night after night after night, the blood got more and more on my hands. He goes, to the point that I was soaking in the blood, and I'd go in my dreams and I'd wash my hands and and in my dream all night I would continually wash my hand, but my hands could never get clean of the blood. He goes, then I started feeling that I was moving into insanity when I would, in my awakening hours, go in to wash my hands before a meal or something and look down and see them covered in blood, even though there was no blood. He goes, and I would wash them and I would scrub them with soap and rock and everything, and nothing could take the blood off. And I was saying to myself, I'm going insane. And one night in my dream, as I was having the dream of the blood upon my hands, a man in a white robe came and stood before me and says, if you find me and if you believe in me, I can take the blood away. He says, and I'm in this country, there are no Bibles, there are no churches. He goes, but I started to look for this man in the white robe. I started to look for him. And little pieces of information came here, and little pieces of information would come there. And long into it, at least a year or more, I would be searching in little pieces, and I came to the place of the understanding that the man in the white robe was Jesus Christ, and that he was the Savior and could take my sin away and take and wash the blood away. And long after a year, he finally came to the place. It's Jesus Christ. And he believed in Jesus. And with no preaching or nothing, he gave his life to Jesus Christ right there. Radical salvation, leads his wife and his children to Christ in the place that you can be killed. Then in the boldness for service on to the Lord, he started to slip out of his country, find Bibles, find pamphlets. He even was bringing in the Jesus video into his country and secretly distributing them to the people at the risk of his own life, in the stealth at the night, slipping away, walking hundreds of miles round trip or whatever it took to find those Bibles and bring them and give them to the people. One day he was on his trip and he comes around the corner, and guess who was there? His 15 men. They had heard, they were looking for him, and they wanted to kill him for the betrayal of Allah. They beat him and they were pounding on him, and the plan was to kill him right there, and they kept beating. But one of the 15 had just received Christ. We're not told exactly how, but he had just received Christ. He didn't know where he was going with Christ and all these things of Christ, but at that moment he says to the men, he goes, you know what? We don't know who he's working with. Let's leave him alive. Let me patch him up. Let me get him back to health, and then we can torture him slowly and get all the information on who he's working with. And the other men agreed. So he loaded him up on a donkey, took him to a safe place, patched him up, and sent him away. Saved his life. So here this man is, his story, beaten, left for dead, imprisoned for his faith, all the things that come with of being a follower for Christ. Sounds like a modern day Paul, sounds like a modern day book of Acts. So Nick then says to him, after 6 hours, you got quite a story. He goes, earlier you had told your story that you led your wife and your kids to Christ. How are they involved in this ministry that you have of sneaking Bibles in and the Jesus video? And he says, Nick says, I was not ready for this. He said, this man burst out of the shadow into the light and put his hands on my shoulders, and with anger and fear mixed together in his face, he says, no. I've been beaten. I've been left for dead. I've been imprisoned. I've given all and willing to give all to Jesus Christ. He goes, but my greatest fear is that one day Jesus will ask me to give my wife or my sons and daughters. He goes, it's too much. He goes, it's too much. He says, I lose sleep at night with the thought that Jesus would ask me to give my sons and my wife and my daughter. And he shakes Nick and he says, tell me, would Jesus ever ask me of that? Nothing will bring a man to his knees. Nothing will make a man weep out till he can't weep no more than the fear that his wife or his sons and daughter could end up in harm's way, could suffer in any way. They would rather give me the pain, give me whatever it would take. Let me take the beating. Let me work 16, 20-hour days. I don't care what it takes as long as it's not my kids, as long as it's not my wife. To which, back to the story, he says to Nick, tell me that he would never. And Nick had shared some pieces with him during this 6 hours. Nick had 3 sons himself. They were doing ministry, I believe, in Somalia. And Nick's oldest son died of malaria, which easily could have been healed here in the States. But he dies there. And he says, I was devastated. I was poured out. He didn't say it, but I know he wept until he didn't have anything left to weep. But me and my wife both said, Jesus is worth it. The gospel is worth it. And the life we live is worth it. And so Jesus said to this man, or Nick said to this man, who he calls in his book the toughest man he's ever met, the toughest man on earth. And he said to him, is Jesus worth it? To which this man said, I must leave because Jesus is worth it. And I need to go home and I need to get my family involved in the work of Jesus. Very extreme story for us here in the United States. But parents, you know, there's an application for us right here. And there's an application for us in our lives today. Jesus is worth it. Living for him, living it out, and pouring ourselves out for him is absolutely worth it. And we need to teach our kids through our lives, through our actions, and our words, but not just our words. Jesus is worth it for us dads to not go to Ziklag, to not leave the place that he's called us. Even if going to Ziklag, leaving the place that God would have us, could bring them comfort, could bring them ease of life. We need to teach our kids and we need to exemplify it that Jesus is worth it, to live out to the fullest this word and its fullest command, regardless of what the world brings us, regardless of what comes with this world. And you know what? Even if there's a better school, but that school is not a godly school or a place that would take our kids away, we need to say, Jesus is worth it to stay where we're at. And I think one of the biggest things I can see with us as parents so many times, we think education is greater. I know this isn't the best place to have my child, but they need this education because you know what? When they get this education, they're going to get a good career. They're going to get a good job, and they're going to be taken care of, and they're going to do well. See, I need to make sure that they have what they need to make sure that they can prosper financially. It's no different than David. This is absolutely no different than David taking his family to Ziklag because you know what? Ziklag, there was comfort and ease. My family had prosperity there. There was no prosperity in Judah. I think our kids need to see it and we need to speak it. We need to say it. Son, Jesus is worth it. Daughter, Jesus is worth it, whatever the price. Camden, someday your father won't be here. Someday we'll be separated, and you'll be without me. But I pray that you'll hear the words today. Jesus is worth it. He's worth living it out and pouring it out, whatever he calls us to, in the obedience of his word. I know it's not easy. I know there's taunting. I know there's mocking. I know it's hard to go against the flow. I know your friends are going this way and they're saying, who cares about that? That's old, fuddy Bible stuff, man. Your parents are over the top. I want to say to you, youth, Jesus is worth it. He is worth every last ounce of your being, regardless of what it cost you. Whether it cost you friends, whether it cost you money, whether it cost you free time, whether it cost you pleasure, Jesus is worth it, and you can be sure of that. And as we closed last week, I'll just read it. Romans 12. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Moses, you want to hear something crazy? Moses, he had it made. He was fine out there on the mount of God. But the cry of the children of Israel went up to the Lord, and God spoke to Moses, go and speak on my behalf. You want to hear something crazy, but something profound that we can apply? In chapter 4, it says, then Moses took his wife and his sons and set them on a donkey and returned to the land of Egypt. I'm going to go to the land of Egypt before the greatest army in the world. I'm going to go to the land of Egypt, and I'm going to tell Pharaoh, the greatest power on the face of the earth, let God's people go. And if you don't, he will kill your son. Would you not tremble? Would you not fear? Would you not be like, I'll do it, but I'm not taking my wife and my kids with me? Because he could take my wife and make her a slave in the worst way. He could take my kids and make them slaves in the worst way. But Moses walks into the greatest military power and the greatest obstacle that man has ever faced on the face of the earth with his sons and daughter without fear. And God will speak in Exodus 6, and I'll just read you. I want you to hear these 7 I wills for those who follow and obey the promises of God. I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. I will rescue you from their bondage. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgment. I will take you as my people. I will be your God, for I am the Lord your God. I will bring you into the land which I swore to give. And lastly, I will give it to you as a heritage. I am the Lord. He's worth it. He's worth it.
You have made the way for us to know you, a path that's straight and bright. By the light of the
The Word of God is so applicable to the lives of all Christians from the time it was written long into the future. As we continue to study the book of 1 Samuel, we'll learn to listen to God from Samuel and how to love our Creator with all our heart from David. We can even learn from Saul, who failed time and again to follow the one who set him on the throne in the first place. Through each life we see in this book, we're exposed to God's mercy and power, and it will leave us with a choice to make. Will we follow God or try to go on our own way? If you've been exploring what it means to live for your Creator and you're ready to take the next step, we'd like to let you know that we're here to help. We'd love to pray for you, and we'll do our best to answer any questions you have. Please send an email to mail@ccaac.org or give us a call at 443-995-3282. That number again is 443-995-3282. We've also created a page on our website that will give you a better idea of how much meaning life can have when you choose God. Visit ccaac.org and click on the meaning of life to learn more. That website again is ccaac.org. That's all we have time for today. But join us next time right here on Light of the Word, illuminating the heart of God.
You have made